Hey guys, welcome back. For this weekend project, we'll be turning this cluttered closet into this. So to kick off this project, the first thing we need to do is assemble the center shelf. To do this, I'm using a circular saw and a guide clamped down. The material I'm using is 3/4 inch MDF, or medium density fiberboard. This is perfect for a lot of applications that you want to be very accurate, very precise, and that you're going to be painting. I would not recommend it in an application where it could potentially get wet, as it has a tendency to swell. So after cutting the side pieces, I can move on to cutting the shelves. You want these to be perfectly identical, otherwise your box is not going to line up. So I recommend using a table saw. It doesn't have to be an expensive one. As you can see, I'm using a cheap job site table saw from Rigid. You just need something that can create repeated identical cuts. So now that I have all the pieces cut, I can move on to assembling this. I start out by pre-drilling all of my holes and then coming back after with a larger 3/8 bit and opening that up. To fasten this together, I'm going to be using these 2-inch long construction screws, and you can find these at Home Depot, Lowe's, or any home improvement store near you. When I first started out building things, I didn't quite understand why they sold drills and impact drivers in sets. But now that I've had the chance to build a lot of things, I understand how important it is to be able to have two. That way you can have your drill bit in one and your driver in the other. So after laying out all of my marks with the tape measure, I come back with a large square and I can transfer those to the other side of the carcass. And from here, it's rinse and repeat. Insert the shelves, clamp it down, drill the pilot holes, and screw them in. Once I have the carcass completely assembled, I move on to cutting some material for the shelves. I do this by rough cutting it first with my circular saw, and then taking it to the table saw to get a fine-tuned cut. Next, I need to cut the supports that will go underneath the shelves. I again use the table saw to rip them down to width, and then the miter saw to cut them at length. If you'd like to see how I made this assembly table and miter saw station combo, I'll leave a link up in the top right corner. The next thing to do is plug the holes. After adding glue to each of the holes, I use these 3/8 inch flathead plugs to fill them. And after you insert them, you tap them down with a hammer just to make sure they're fully seated, and then you can come back with a flush cut saw and trim off the tops. Using plugs on MDF is not always recommended, but since I'm going to be painting this actually is going to be a very good solution. The recommendation I have when you're doing this is to not hammer them down too hard. This is important because hammering them too hard actually displaces some of the softer MDF, and that just leads to a lot more sanding. Once I have all the plugs cut, I use a belt sander to even out all of the transitions between the shelves. Then I come back with an orbital sander because that can get a much smoother finish and really even everything out. After that, I gave it a quick once over with a sanding block just to break those edges so they're not so sharp. And with that done, we're ready for painting. Painting MDF is, in my opinion, the best way to finish it. So I start off with a generic paint primer. This is a very important step. Primer is a lot thicker than paint, and since MDF is so porous, you need the primer to clog all of those individual pores so that when you go to paint your final coat, it goes on smoothly. I did 2 coats of primer and then 1 coat of ultra pure white from Behr, which I had them color match at Home Depot to my existing closet. As you can see, I had to remove this small section of trim before I could install the shelves. And to do this, I used an oscillating multi-tool and then came back after with some drywall mud and filled in the gaps. Then after letting that dry overnight, I came back and gave it a quick sanding. I designed these shelves to be friction fit, so all I need to do is get it in place and fasten a couple screws in the top to hold it steady. This is also going to have shelves on either side in the middle, and those will help stabilize it as well. In order to install those shelves, I had to get the supports in first, and I used construction adhesive and finish nails to attach those to the studs in the wall. Then with the supports in place, I could lower the shelf on there and nail it down. After the shelf is tacked down, I pre-drill and sink a couple screws into the side to add some more strength. Then I can move on and do the same thing to the other side. Once those shelves are in, we can move on to adding some finishing touches. So first I go around and caulk all of the seams. This adds a really nice clean look to all of your corners. Then I can add the closet rod hardware and touch up a few spots with some paint. I also want to note that I did paint the area where I cut out the trim. And here's a quick look of the closet before we load everything back in it.
So that's a wrap for this project. Thank you for watching. It's been super fun building it. In terms of materials, the sheet of MDF right now, it's super expensive. It was 50 bucks. The closet bar was only $15, including the hardware to install it. I used about $10 worth of paint. These bins I got at Target, or I shouldn't say my wife got at Target. They were about 8 bucks each. So they were $40 total. And then about $10 in odds and ends with caulking and the paint tray, stuff like that. So you're only looking at what, $120? It's super cheap, super simple. It did take a little bit of work, obviously, as everything does, but it was a really, really fun project. So that's it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.